I wanted this first, there's going to be 3 short talks, and this first session before morning tea. And the first one, I just want to look at what is the problem with what we call rugged individualism. That's the phrase that often gets bandied around. It's really been part of the Western culture for about 100 years in terms of our heroes. Even the word itself, though, rugged individualism, it's got a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Rugged, masculine, manly. Individualism, self-sufficient, independence. It really was coined, I think, by the phrase or the speechwriter for Herbert Hoover, who was the President of the United States, I think in the 20s. And Hoover came up with the phrase really to explain, justify small government and you really get out of people's private affairs so you can encourage them to be, self-reliant and so forth. And that really then became part of our Western culture. I'm sure it was there before, but it really kind of took a new level. And in a way, I'm kind of speaking to that part of you that highly values that category, rugged individualists, because I think that's what you want to be, and that's what I think the Bible doesn't want you to be. See, the rugged individualist is this Mr. Self-Reliant, Mr. Solo Man. If you're over 60s, it was, on TV, it was a Lone Ranger or kind of those many John Wayne characters. If you're over 50 like me, it was Mr. Rocky, Rambo or Bruce Lee. Under 50s they're saying it. Over 40 it was Van Damme. Over 30s I couldn't pick. I don't know who would fit in the next category. I don't know. Over 20s it was Bear Grylls. These guys who go where no one else has gone before, who go it alone, who rely on their own skills, who don't need anyone. I heard someone describing someone as being self-sufficient as though it were a compliment, and it got me thinking: is that really a compliment? If you look at that notion through the eyes of the Bible, is self-sufficiency a compliment? And our problem is, I think we've taken that idea and we've applied it actually to our Christian heroes. And by the way, the heroes on the table that I've got here are Mark Zuckerberg, did I pronounce it right? Mr. Facebook and all his billions. Sorry, these aren't necessarily heroes. I realised I assumed it was a hero thing, but it's about inviting 2 people to your barbecue. And of course, you may not necessarily want your hero to be at your barbecue. You're just curious, like someone wanted Hitler. I'm pretty sure Hitler isn't someone's hero. But you look at the list from Billy Graham to John Cleese to Albert Einstein to Nelson Mandela, Napoleon Bonaparte, you kind of see them ahead all by themselves, leading whatever area they're leading in. Now, my problem is we bring that into the ideal godly man, the solo man, the one who does it on his own, the one who doesn't need anyone, the one who serves but doesn't need to be served, the one who's there for his wife, his kids, his mates, leads the way. He's a rock, consistent in season, out of season. Men, there are a lot of good qualities here. He may have tough times, he may even occasionally fall into porn, maybe lose his temper, but he's prepared to work on his sin issues all by himself. He doesn't need anyone to serve him, doesn't need anyone to help him, doesn't need anyone to hold him accountable. He may weep before the Lord, but he's not likely to weep in front of you. He learns by himself in his office. He goes to his growth group, but he's there for others. He doesn't need them to be there for him. He doesn't need anyone for him. You never hear from his lips words like, I need help. Can I share with you a struggle I'm going through? Please pray for me. I don't know what I'm doing. Those words ever come out of your mouth. I need someone to hold me accountable. I think I'm lonely and I need a friend. He doesn't need a counselor, this guy, because he counsels himself. He lives by the great line, God is enough. Heck, I wrote a book with that title, but I didn't mean that. That title, God is enough, it can sound very super spiritual, but God's opening statement about men in the Bible is in Genesis 2:18. The Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. And like I said, I've written a book called God is Not Enough, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't minister to us apart from people in isolation. That was never meant to be that truth. It was about that God is enough and his ministry direct and through other people is enough. Now, of course, the context of that verse is the provision of woman. Genesis 2:18 reads, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a suitable helper for him. It starts off in marriage, male and female, but it doesn't end there. And the role of reflecting God's rule in this world happens with your partner as you bear children, go forth and multiply and subdue the earth under God's reign. But then it got me thinking, it's not just our partners, because as you scan the pages of the Bible, you rarely ever see people doing things alone. And so even when God says to Abraham in Genesis 12, verse 1, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land that I will show you, and that's a big ask. He didn't go alone. He didn't just have the missus with him there weren't any kids, him and the missus. It was Abraham's nephew was there, Lot. And when Moses approaches Pharaoh, Moses himself asks for Aaron to go with him. And when Moses is trying to judge all of Israel and he is just exhausted and can't do it, Jethro, father-in-law, comes in and says, hey, Moses, have you ever thought of breaking the group into thousands, units of thousands, hundreds, fifties and tens, and appointing people to share the load? Because you are going to die if you keep running like this. Doing it alone is never God's plan. When Joshua sends the 12 spies into the land, they go in. He doesn't send one spy into the promised land. He sends a pack of them. In fact, probably one of the rare times where you get the rugged individual picture is with David and Goliath. I mean, he truly stands alone, trusting in God, jealous for his glory, as he takes on a 9-foot giant. And probably that's one of the rare moments you see it in the Bible. And even then, that's not an example of, we're not to be like David. It's actually Christ who is like David in that story. He's the fulfillment of that. And the rest of David's story is a story of a man who constantly was with his men, and when he wasn't, 2 Samuel 11, and was by himself on the roof, that's when he got in trouble, when he was perving at Bathsheba. In fact, you see David in that lovely covenant with Jonathan and that beautiful love that they have for each other. Proverbs constantly talks about the need for guidance and taking counsel with others. We are better together. Here, Proverbs 15:22, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. I tell you, I'm shocked. I can't speak for Brian's church, but I can speak for MBM. I'm shocked at how many people make big decisions in their life and take no counsel with others. They move to another part of Sydney. They never think about whether there's a decent church there and how it's going to affect them spiritually. They're thinking about marrying someone, and they keep it a private decision. It is your decision in the end, but the lack of counsel is surprising. Proverbs 27:6, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. Proverbs 27:9, the pleasantness of one's friend springs from his earnest counsel. We are better together. We need each other. We need people to speak into our life, for you to bounce off the issues in your life with another, to kind of get them out of your head, out of your mouth, out of your private world, and to say, guys, what do you think? Give me another take on this. Iron can't sharpen itself, can it? Just you have a knife there, it ain't going to sharpen itself. It needs another piece of iron to rub against it. That famous proverb, 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. It is impossible to mature and grow unless you're actually with another. In fact, you look at Jesus in his great mission. He wasn't a solo man. Almost from the very beginning, he draws 12 to be with him. And not just kind of like on a 9 to 5, they were with him all the time. And he sends them out, then he sends the 72 out. He never sends them one by one, he sends them 2 by 2. Even in the Garden of Gethsemane, when that moment on the cross, just before he's on the cross and he's going to be forsaken by God and forsaken by man, even at that point when he comes out with his great cry and prayer, not my will but yours be done. Notice who's around. Matthew 26, verse 37. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. And then you think he'll go and pray by himself. No, he took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He's sharing his struggle. Stay here and keep watch with me. Be with me in this, guys. Now, as you know, they fell asleep on the job again and again. But Jesus, the one who epitomizes, the one who stands alone and endures the wrath of God, even the lead up to that, he's actually drawing on the saints to be with him as he faces the greatest horror of all, the experience of hell at the cross. When Paul is sent out on his missionary journey, it wasn't just Paul, it was Paul and Barnabas. And then you constantly read of co-worker after co-worker, Silas, Titus, Timothy, and the list goes on. In Colossians 4:11, he's not ashamed to say how he's been ministered to. Jesus, one of the two Jews who were part of his team, who is called Justus, also sends greetings. Co-workers for the kingdom of God, and they have proved a comfort to me. You getting this? You getting the idea? We are better together. Even the Lone Ranger had Tonto. So I couldn't have said that a year ago because Johnny Depp's film hadn't come out, but hopefully you know. Rugged individualism. You know what it's built on? It's built on one of two things. It's built on pride. I don't need anyone. It's built on pride. I think that's been my issue. And it's built on fear. That is, I'm afraid of being known. I'm afraid of being challenged. I'm afraid of hearing something I don't want to hear. I'm afraid of being condemned. I'm afraid of being let down. Sometimes that's the big one. That you promise to do something and you let me down, so I don't engage in a relationship of commitment to prevent me from being disappointed. I think, you asked me what my big three regrets in my life as a Christian and as a pastor for 23 years, it's that it was only 7 years ago that I got a mentor. Up until then, I did try once, but half-hearted. I tried to do it on my own. I mean, I might have done it with staff, but I mean, up close and personal, someone who'd walk with me in that journey of leadership. And I reckon this church suffered as a result of it. And now I require every staff member to have a mentor. But gee, it took me a few years to wake up to that one. Too many men are trying to do the Christian life alone. I think that's the reason why we're not making as much progress. I think that's the reason why we're kind of stuck in our sin a lot of the time. I think it's the reason why we fail to make the gains that we want to make. I think sometimes it's the reason why we're bored or disinterested or unchallenged, because we've got no one speaking truth and life and raising the bar, helping us to go forward. Fear or pride, which do you think it is? Because my chances are it's going to be one of them two. Well, end of talk one. You've never heard me preach that quickly, have you? Now it's activity time. And here's a question for you for about 10 minutes. I want you to go around the table and no more than 1 minute each. So, it should be close to 10 minutes. Here's the question I think we've got on the screen. Which person has had the biggest impact on your walk as a Christian and why? So we're just reflecting, broad base. Which person has had the biggest impact on your walk as a Christian and why is that the case? So if you each share for about a minute, you won't have much more than a minute and a half. Go for it, guys.